The desperate call. The morning light of three suns cast rainbow patterns through the crystal spires of Lumina Prime. Elder Zara stood at the apex of the great resonance chamber, her translucent form pulsing with soft blue light as she communed with the planetary consciousness. The Luminari had lived in perfect harmony for over 10,000 years, their crystalline bodies converting starlight into pure energy, their cities growing like living gems from the planet's surface. Zara felt the disturbance before she saw it. A shadow fell across the chamber as something massive blocked the light of the nearest sun. She turned her faceted head upward, her light dimming with fear. Above Lumina Prime, a structure the size of a small moon hung in space, its surface writhing, with mechanical tendrils. As she watched in horror, smaller shapes detached from the massive vessel, swarming downward like metallic locusts. The shadow swarm had found them. Across the Serenity Cluster, the peaceful worlds of the Luminari came under attack. The shadow creatures were ancient parasites, mechanical beings that had wandered the void between galaxies for millions of years. They consumed energy in all its forms, growing stronger with each world they devoured. The Luminari, beings of pure light and crystal, were perfect prey. In the capital city of Prism Falls, Keeper Radiance watched in terror as the shadow creatures descended. They moved like liquid metal, flowing through the streets and absorbing the light from every crystal they touched. The beautiful singing crystals that had powered their civilization for millennia went dark, one by one, their music replaced by an awful silence. "Elder Zara," Radiance called through the light speech that connected all Luminari minds. "They are everywhere. The outer cities have gone completely dark. We need help." Zara's form flickered with anguish. The Luminari had never known war, never built weapons, never learned to fight. They were gardeners of light, artists of crystal, philosophers of harmony. They had no way to defend themselves against these creatures that fed on the very essence of their being. "Send the call," Zara commanded, her light pulsing with desperate urgency. "Send it to every species in the galaxy. Tell them the Luminari are dying." The great communication crystal at the heart of the resonance chamber began to glow, its light intensifying until it became a beacon visible from space. The message it carried was simple but heartbreaking. "We are the Luminari of the Serenity Cluster. Ancient darkness has come to our worlds. We are peaceful beings. We do not know how to fight. Our light is failing. Please, anyone who can help us, we beg you to come." The message traveled through the galaxy's communication networks, reaching every civilized world. On Centauri Prime, the insectoid hive minds sent supplies and medical equipment. The aquatic, deep swimmers of Oceanus offered to evacuate refugees to their underwater cities. The mechanical constructors built shelter habitats and launched them toward the Serenity Cluster. The telepathic voidwalkers sent thoughts of peace and comfort across the void, but none of them sent weapons. None of them sent warriors. Deep space. Station Aurora hung in the darkness between star systems, a human outpost on the edge of explored space. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck, watching the stars and thinking about her daughter back on Earth. The message from the Eye. Luminari had reached Aurora 6 hours ago, and Sarah had been wrestling with the decision ever since. "Commander," called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. "We're receiving additional reports from the Serenity Cluster. The situation is getting worse." Sarah turned from the window, her expression grim. She was a small woman with silver-streaked hair and steel-gray eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness. "Show me." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the Serenity Cluster under attack. 12 massive shadow motherships had taken position around the Luminari worlds, their mechanical tendrils reaching down to the planets like hungry fingers. Smaller vessels swarmed through space, and the beautiful light of the Luminari worlds was dimming by the hour. "What's the response from the galactic community?" Sarah asked. "Medical supplies, refugee transport, food shipments," Torres replied. "The usual humanitarian response, but nothing that can actually stop the shadow swarm." Sarah stared at the display, her mind racing. The Luminari were dying while the galaxy sent them band-aids and good wishes. Someone needed to do something, real something that would actually save lives. "Get me Fleet Admiral Webb," she ordered. Marcus Webb's weathered face appeared on the screen within minutes. The old admiral looked like he had been carved from stone, his expression permanently set in determined lines. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of the Terran battleship Defiance, humanity's flagship in this sector of space. "Sarah," Webb said, his voice gruff but warm. "I assume this is about the Luminary situation." "It is, sir. I'm recommending immediate military intervention." Webb's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a hell of a recommendation, Commander. We're talking about a species we've never met, fighting an enemy we don't understand, in a system that's not under human protection. With respect, sir, that's exactly why we need to do this. The Luminary are dying. Every other species in the galaxy is sending them supplies and evacuation ships, but no one is sending what they actually need. And what's that? Someone willing to fight for them." Webb was quiet for a long moment, studying Sarah's face. "You know what this means, don't you? If we send warships, we're not just helping the Luminary. We're telling the galaxy that humans are willing to fight for strangers. That could change everything." "Maybe it's time for that change, sir." Webb nodded slowly. "I'll mobilize the Third Fleet. 40 ships, including the Defiance. We can be at the Serenity cluster in 72 hours. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Sarah. Thank me when we bring those crystal people home alive." On Lumina Prime, Elder Zara received the human response with confusion and fear. The message was brief and to the point. "This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force. We have received your distress call. 40 warships are en route to your location. Hold on, help is coming." "Warships?" Keeper Radiance asked, his light flickering with uncertainty. "Why are they sending weapons?" "We asked for help, not war." Zara's ancient mind struggled to understand. In all her centuries of life, she had never encountered a species that responded to a cry for help by sending instruments of destruction. The humans were young, barely 100 years since their first contact with galactic civilization. Most species found them strange and unsettling, with their short lifespans, their emotional intensity, and their fascination with conflict. "Perhaps," Zara said slowly, "they do not understand what we need." But even as she spoke, she felt a flutter of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The other species had sent kind words and supplies, but the humans had sent their warriors. Maybe, just maybe, warriors were what the Luminary needed after all. The human fleet moved through hyperspace like a spear thrust toward the heart of darkness. Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Webb stood in the war room, studying tactical displays with his senior officers. The Shadow Swarm was unlike anything humanity had faced before, but Webb had learned long ago that every enemy had weaknesses. "What do we know about their capabilities?" he asked. Captain Rodriguez, the fleet's tactical officer, pulled up sensor data. "Limited information, sir. They appear to be energy-based parasites. They feed on light, heat, electrical power, anything that generates energy. Their ships are partially organic, partially mechanical. They swarm in coordinated groups." "Numbers?" 12. Motherships, each approximately 5 kilometers long. Thousands of smaller vessels. Ground forces unknown, but satellite imagery shows them covering the Luminary cities like a plague. Webb nodded grimly. The odds were not good, but humans had faced worse odds before. "Weapons effectiveness?" "Unknown, sir. No one has ever fought them successfully. Most species just evacuate and let them consume whatever they want." "Well," Webb said, his voice carrying the weight of determination, "they haven't fought humans before." On Lumina Prime, the situation grew more desperate by the hour. The shadow creatures had consumed most of the outer cities, and their mechanical tendrils were beginning to probe the defenses of the capital. The Luminary had retreated to their deepest crystal caverns, but even there, the light was failing. Elder Zara gathered the surviving keepers in the great resonance chamber. Their combined light was barely enough to keep the ancient crystal singing, its melody now a whisper of its former glory. "How long do we have?" asked Keeper Melody, her young form flickering with fear. "Perhaps one day," Zara replied. "Maybe less. The humans said they would come, but I do not understand how weapons can help us against this darkness." "Maybe," said Keeper Radiance. "Humans see things differently than we do. Maybe they know something we don't." As if summoned by his words, the communication crystal suddenly blazed with new light. A human voice, strong and clear, cut through the darkness. "Luminary survivors, this is Admiral Webb. We are dropping out of hyperspace in 30 minutes. Take shelter in your deepest caves and stay there until we give the all clear. We're going to clean up this mess." The Luminari looked at each other in confusion. Clean up? How could anyone clean up something like the Shadow Swarm? They were about to find out. The human response. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Serenity cluster, like a storm breaking over a peaceful lake. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical display. With grim satisfaction, 40 human warships spread out in battle formation, their weapons charging, their crews ready for the fight of their lives. "Jesus," whispered Captain Rodriguez, staring at the sensor readings. "Look at the size of those things." The shadow motherships hung in space like malevolent clouds, their surfaces writhing with mechanical tentacles. Each one was larger than the biggest human space station, and they pulsed with absorbed energy from the dying luminary worlds. Smaller shadow vessels swarmed around them in the thousands, their movements coordinated like a vast predatory school of fish. "Fleet status report," Webb ordered. "All ships ready for combat, sir. Fighters launching now. Marine assault group standing by." Webb nodded, his expression carved from stone. "Communications open channel to the fleet." "Channel open, sir." Webb's voice carried to every human ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral Webb. Today we fight for people we've never met, against an enemy we don't understand, in a system that's not our own. We're here because sometimes when someone asks for help, you have to be willing to fight for them. The Luminari are gardeners and artists. They've never known war. They can't defend themselves against these parasites, so we'll defend them. We'll fight for them, and we'll win for them. All ships engage at will." The space around the Serenity cluster erupted into chaos. The human warships opened fire with everything they had, their weapons cutting brilliant lines through the darkness. The shadow motherships responded immediately, launching clouds of smaller vessels that moved like living darkness toward the human fleet. Captain Elena Rodriguez led her fighter squadron into the heart of the swarm. She was a small, fierce woman, with quick reflexes and an unshakable faith in human engineering. Her fighter, the Starhawk, cut through space like a blade, its weapons finding targets with deadly precision. "Stay tight, people," she called to her squadron. "These things move fast, but they're not used to fighting humans. Show them what we can do." The shadow fighters were unlike anything Elena had ever faced. They moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. They flowed around obstacles like liquid metal, their weapons firing beams of pure darkness that seemed to devour light itself. But they had never fought humans before, and humans had learned to fight in the chaos of space. Elena's squadron spread out, using unpredictable movement patterns and covering fire to confuse the enemy. The shadow creatures tried to swarm individual fighters, but the humans fought as a team, always supporting each other, always covering their wingmates. It was the difference between a swarm and a military unit. "Rodriguez to defiance," Elena called as she destroyed another shadow fighter. "I'm seeing something interesting. These things seem to be vulnerable to our plasma weapons. The energy frequency is causing some kind of feedback in their systems." "Copy that, Rodriguez. All ships, switch to plasma weapons. Target their energy absorption nodes." The tide of battle began to turn. The human plasma weapons, designed to fight energy-based shields, were perfectly suited to combat the shadow creatures. Each hit caused cascading failures in their systems, making them vulnerable to conventional weapons. The shadow motherships, accustomed to absorbing and redirecting energy attacks, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer volume and variety of human weapons. But the real test came when Admiral Webb made the most dangerous decision of his career. All ships, prepare for close assault on the lead mothership. We're going in. The Defiance and 5 other human warships dove toward the massive shadow vessel, their weapons blazing. The alien ship's tentacles reached out like hungry fingers, but human point defense systems cut them apart before they could strike. The warships flew through clouds of smaller shadow creatures, their armor taking damage but holding firm. "This is insane," muttered Captain Rodriguez, watching the tactical display. "This is human," Webb replied. The human ships reached the shadow mothership's hull and began firing directly into its core. The ancient vessel, which had consumed entire star systems, had never faced an enemy willing to get close enough to inflict real damage. Its energy absorption systems, designed to handle attacks from a distance, couldn't cope with weapons firing at point-blank range. The mothership began to die. As the massive vessel broke apart, something extraordinary happened. The thousands of smaller shadow creatures that had been swarming around it suddenly stopped moving. They hung in space like dead machines, their coordination broken. "They're linked," Elena realized, her voice crackling over the comm. "Kill the mothership and the swarm loses its mind." Webb smiled grimly. "All ships target the remaining motherships. Let's break their entire network." The battle raged for hours. One by one, the shadow motherships fell to human weapons. With each death, thousands of smaller creatures went dark, their collective intelligence shattered. The humans fought with desperate courage, knowing that every minute they delayed meant more luminary dying on the planets below. But space combat was only half the battle. On Lumina Prime, Colonel James Park led the first human ground assault against the shadow creatures that had overrun the luminary cities. Park was a giant of a man with dark skin and gentle eyes that belied his skill as a warrior. He had volunteered for this mission because he believed in protecting the innocent, regardless of species. "Remember," he told his Marines as their drop. Ships descended through the atmosphere. "We're not here to conquer. We're here to save lives. The Luminari are friendlies. Anything else is a target." The dropships landed in the ruins of Prism Falls, where thousands of shadow creatures crawled through the streets like mechanical spiders. The Marines deployed quickly, their weapons cutting through the alien swarm with disciplined efficiency. But the real prize was deeper in the city, where the surviving Luminari had taken shelter in the crystal caverns. Park's team fought their way through streets filled with shadow creatures, their plasma weapons clearing a path through the mechanical swarm. The aliens were tough, but human military doctrine emphasized adaptability and combined arms tactics. The Marines used everything from heavy weapons to explosive charges, always advancing, always pushing forward. "Sir," called Sergeant Williams, pointing to a massive crystal structure. "I'm reading life signs in there, dozens of them." Park nodded. "That's our objective. Let's get these people out of here." The rescue operation was unlike anything in human military history. The Marines descended into crystal caverns that sang with harmonic frequencies, their lights dancing off faceted walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner glow. The Luminari they found there were unlike any alien species. Humanity had encountered beings of living crystal and captured starlight. Elder Zara looked up as the human Marines entered the great resonance chamber. She had expected to die in this place, surrounded by the fading light of her people. Instead, she saw creatures of flesh and metal, their faces hidden behind tactical masks, their weapons ready, but not threatening. "Are you Elder Zara?" Park asked, his voice gentle despite the chaos around them. "I am," she replied, her light pulsing with wonder. "You are the humans who came to help us." "Yes, ma'am. We're here to get you out of here. Can you move?" Zara looked around at the other Luminari, hundreds of them huddled in the crystal chamber. "We can move, but there are so many of us. How can you possibly evacuate everyone?" Park smiled behind his mask. "Ma'am, humans have been evacuating civilians from combat zones for centuries. We're pretty good at it." The evacuation took hours. Human Marines and medics worked tirelessly to move the Luminari to safety, carrying those who were too weak to walk, shielding them from shadow creatures that tried to interfere. The humans fought running battles through the crystal caves, their weapons lighting the darkness as they protected their alien charges. Keeper Radiance watched in amazement as a human Marine named Davis carried an injured Luminary child to safety. The Marine's armor was damaged, sparks flying from his power pack, but he never stopped moving. When a shadow creature tried to attack them, Davis put himself between the alien and the child, taking a hit that would have killed the young Luminary. "Why?" Radiance asked as human medics worked on Davis's injuries. "Why do you risk yourselves for us?" Davis looked up at the crystalline being, his face pale but determined. "Because that's what we do," he said simply. "We protect people who can't protect themselves." The battle for the Serenity Cluster ended 3 days after it began. The last Shadow mothership died under concentrated fire from the human fleet, its death cry echoing across space as its swarm went silent forever. On the planets below, human Marines and combat engineers worked tirelessly to clear out the remaining shadow creatures and restore power to the Luminary cities. Admiral Webb stood in the Great Resonance Chamber, watching as the ancient crystal began to sing again. The Luminary had returned to their capital city, their light slowly returning as they healed from their ordeal. Elder Zara approached him, her crystalline form pulsing with soft blue light. "Admiral Webb," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls ring. "I must ask you something. Why did you come when others would not?" Webb looked at the alien elder, this being of living light who had lived for centuries in peace. "Because sometimes when someone asks for help, you have to be willing to fight for them. But we are strangers to you. Our worlds are not part of your territory. You gained nothing from helping us." Webb smiled, an expression that transformed his weathered face. "We gained something, Elder Zara. We gained friends. And in this galaxy, friends are worth fighting for." The news of humanity's intervention in the Serenity Cluster spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time, a species had responded to a cry for help, not with supplies or good wishes, but with warships and warriors. The galactic community was stunned, confused, and in many cases, impressed. The Centauri hive mind sent a formal message of gratitude to the human government. The deep swimmers composed water songs in honor of human courage. Even the ancient voidwalkers, who rarely communicated with physical beings, sent thoughts of respect across the void. But the most important change was in the Luminary themselves. Elder Zara stood once again in the Great Resonance Chamber, but now the crystal walls carried new harmonics, new songs that spoke of friendship and alliance. The Luminary had learned that sometimes the greatest act of peace was being willing to fight for it. Captain Elena Rodriguez was awarded the Terran Star for her leadership during the battle. Colonel James Park received the Galactic Service Medal for his rescue operations. Sergeant Davis, who had been wounded protecting a Luminary child, was invited to the Luminary homeworld as a guest of honor. But the real victory was simpler than any medal or ceremony. Keeper Radiance, the young Luminary who had witnessed human sacrifice, established a new philosophy among his people. They called it the harmony of guardians, the understanding that true peace sometimes required warriors to protect it. The Serenity Cluster became the first non-human territory to request a formal alliance with humanity. The Luminary offered their advanced crystal technology in exchange for human military protection. More importantly, they offered their friendship to a species that had been willing to die for strangers. Years later, when other threats emerged in the galaxy, the call for help would go out again. And humanity would answer, not because they had to, but because they had learned something important. In a galaxy full of species who would send supplies and sympathy, sometimes what the innocent really needed was someone willing to fight for them. The galaxy was changing and humanity was showing the way. When shadows fell across peaceful worlds, humans would rise to meet them, because that's what humans did. They protected people who couldn't protect themselves.